things are pretty grim at the moment, eh? So I thought today we could talk some hopeful history. Starting off strong, we are going to be talking about, bing, 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 Pompeii. Yes, that Pompeii of ye old ancient Roman fame, the city that was destroyed by a volcano along with Herculaneum. But here's the thing about that. You see, we kind of all were sold this idea that volcano blew up, Pompeii was destroyed, but that's not really the entire truth. I mean, it was, but there's some really powerful human stories of survival and community underneath that. Because you see, in AD 79, when Mount Vesuvius erupted, there was roughly 30,000 people that were living and working and trading in Pompeii. But they didn't find 30,000 bodies. Yeah, only a fraction of those casts that you see are actual people from Pompeii. There were a number of escapees, of survivors. And that's the hopeful history, because so far, archaeologists have been able to find roughly records of 200 survivors in 12 cities surrounding Pompeii immediately after. Like the Caltilius family, who went on to become very, very prosperous. I think they maybe even ended up having like a port named after them or something. There were families that took in orphans that they were not related to, which, according to the historical record, pretty unique. They didn't have any other records for like over 1,000 years of foster children being taken in as foster children, unrelated, but that happened after Pompeii. And that's not all. Although we've been told that the story of Pompeii ends with the city being buried by a volcano, not the full story. Afterwards, there was a huge, huge effort by the government to rebuild Pompeii. They spent a lot of money creating building works, building projects to get people back into work, to help get these communities rolling. There's evidence that people basically stayed among the ruins and quickly put up shops and tried to keep the flow of life going as much as they could while they rebuilt. But to me, that's neither the most powerful part of Pompeii's legacy or the most hopeful part of this history. It's the community reaction, okay? Again and again, as historians find these stories of survivors of Pompeii, they find people who were accepted with open arms into communities that they were not from. And you got to remember, the Roman Empire at this point, very, very multicultural, okay? These cities would take in these survivors. They would build temples for them, even though that city themselves may not like those gods, or they may not worship or center on those gods. They built temples so that the survivors from Pompeii and Herculaneum coming into their communities could feel at home. They allowed these people to start businesses, to become active members of politics, of community. They weren't thrown into camps. They weren't isolated. They weren't othered. They were welcomed with open arms. And time again, we saw, even those that struggled, they were brought into the communities, brought into societies, married in, and became members of that place. They were not othered. It's a powerful, powerful story, and I highly recommend you to go and look into the stories of the survivors of Pompeii and how they rebuilt their lives afterwards, because the answers may just surprise you.